I want to start off, of course, we have to talk about this today, fam. It is MLK Jr. Day. You know, we all know who Martin Luther King Jr. was. We know what he represents. But the unfortunate thing about this time, and I know you guys were talking about it before the show, is how mainstream media and all of these politicians and neoliberals in entertainment and throughout, you know, the public sphere politicize and just whitewash his entire legacy, including the freaking FBI, who we know murdered him, right? And so it's just gross to watch. It's disgusting to see how our government can literally kill one of these activists, these people who were uniting others. And MLK, and we've talked about this before, if you know the story, he was actually a pacifist, and he was criticized by the more radical factions of during this time. However, as he was a pacifist, he became less of a pacifist throughout his life after he saw what he saw, and he saw the empire for what it was. And he died because he was talking against capitalism, but also because he was talking about uniting the class, the working people of the United States. And the national security state apparatus, of course, cannot allow somebody with that power and that conviction where people follow you to unite the masses, because then that's it, game over for them. Yeah. So,
campaign, right? Poor People's Campaign.
Yeah.
Concentrating on the Poor People's Campaign, and then be able to have that interview with Reverend Annie Chambers to really connect the dots, you know what I'm saying, about, you know, how it was all about, you know, this very class issue that we were struggling, and like you said, getting into the empire and their habits. That's when they said no more Martin Luther King Jr. We can't have that. Same thing, Freddie Hampton. Same thing, Malcolm X. You know, it's when you start bringing people together in this rainbow coalition, and you get your eye on the prize, which is the ruling class. That's when they say you're too much of a problem and you got to go.
Absolutely, fam. And so the FBI put out this tweet that I think everybody just destroyed and ratioed, where they said, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? This MLK Day 2022 and every day, the FBI remains dedicated to service and committed to protecting our communities. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. So this is what they're quoting from MLK. I mean, they're trying to paint him like he was talking about serving in the FBI or for the military or for the national security state that murdered him. I mean, it's gross to even like put this out there, but we have to, because we have to show people just how bad it is. Some people still don't realize that we live in an empire. We live in an oligarchy. They're still talking about elections as if they're fair. This is a part of that. And then here we go. CNN, the white moderate MLK warned us about. Right? I mean, they're talking about Kristen Sinema. Hillary Clinton, of course, talked about the white moderate the other day. Everybody saw that while we were in Nicaragua. We were just like, what the hell joke of a country is this? Like, it is an absolute disaster. I mean, from the outside looking into the United States, Pasta, it is an absolute shame what this country has become. And we're not talking about the people of this country. We're talking in large majority, right? We're talking about the government and what they've done and how they propagandize people. And to a certain extent, a lot of Americans are a victim of imperialism, of their own imperialism. So it's really gross. You were on Revolution Blackout Network Saturday. So I don't know if you wanted to say something about that.
No, I mean, you know, I think I echoed a lot of those things. You know, somebody texted me in the middle of that show, Pasta, way to black pill that situation. Go in there, you know, and I was just, you know, it's a new Pasta in a way where I'm not going to be reserved in expressing what I believe is the big problem. You know, these intelligence agencies, the apparatus of the intelligence agencies, they work directly for the elites. You know what I'm saying? They're not our friends. They're not there for us. Our issues are the people upstairs, you know, the people up top. I don't want to call them the elitists. I want to call them the ruling class, the predator class, whatever they are. But that is something we need to concentrate on. That's what it is. And that's what Martin Luther King Jr. recognized, Malcolm X, you know, Fred Hampton. They realized what was going on. And as soon as they pointed that out, you know what I'm saying, that's when they went. And now they're still just trying to do the same thing. They're trying to keep people co-opted. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to keep one side pitted against the other. They're like, well, you know who supports Martin Luther King Jr., fam? It's the Democrats. Those Republicans, they're not for Martin Luther King Jr. They're your enemy. You know what I'm saying? And that's what this is all about, controlling that narrative when you see the mainstream media putting out their stories, talking about things they want to talk about, the way they're controlling it. I mean, it's sad right now because they're going back again, the CNN and MSNBC, not talking about anything that really has to do with people's lives, real stories that are going on. They're just talking again about the other side, patriots, Donald Trump, and the people who support him. And they're going to keep this thing going as long as they can. And they'll use days like Martin Luther King Day. I call it should be called Martin Luther King Exploitation Day, because that's all they're doing, the mainstream media and the intelligence apparatus, is exploiting Martin Luther King. That's it.
It's exactly it. They're exploiting his legacy. They're, dancing on his grave in a certain way because they're responsible in large part for his death, and the media is entirely co-opted and everything's co-opted. And now we were talking about this with some of our leftists, independent journalists who live outside of the States, but they see what's happening here, that in the United States now, they no longer just kill people, they assassinate their character. And that is actually far more efficient in some ways, because when you assassinate the character, you don't create a martyr. You create, you just assassinate the character. The person is no longer somebody valid or worthy of being listened to. And when you kill, Martin Luther King Jr., when you kill Fred Hampton, when you kill any of these revolutionaries, you create martyrs and you continue the movement. However, when you character assassinate somebody, sometimes that can be far more effective. And that's what we're seeing right now happen with a lot of the narratives, that are pertaining to today. So then Black in the Empire posted this tweet, and I wanted to read it. He said, "Let's make this clear. Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are against just about every policy that MLK died fighting for." Again, just, going off the fact that what Pasta said, it's Republicans. It's not just Republicans, it's Democrats as well. And I wanted to point out some of the things that MLK has said, Jr., in the past. He was an unapologetic socialist that's never talked about. When I learned about MLK in school, I was taught about his "I have a dream" speech, and that's it. And that it was the most milquetoast part of his speeches that you were taught. It was never the revolutionary parts of his speeches. He has said, "We have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifice. The fact is that capitalism was built on the exploitation and suffering of Black slaves and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both Black and white, both here and abroad." And it is these very types of quotes that actually are far, far more dangerous than anything that's ever quoted from liberals from him, as you can see, because he's not only talking about racism, he's talking about the economics, the underlying system, and he's talking about that system both affecting people who are white and Black, pitting them against each other. This is what we always echo on our shows and throughout our work. This is a class issue. At the end of the day, they are exploiting racism to divide. And it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it's being exploited. And so, here again, he talks about the profit motive when it is the sole basis of an economic system, encourages a cutthroat competition and selfish ambition that inspires men to be more concerned about making a living than making a life. Once again, you're so busy trying to attain your housing, pay your bills, that you're not really living. You're busy just working for somebody else and competing with your neighbor instead of understanding that the people at the top are exploiting you. He's talking about these things. He talked about these things way back then. And so this is why he was killed. And then here he goes. This is one of the most famous ones. "We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, materialism, militarism are inescapable of being conquered." And here we are today in the year 2020, when this has just become the complete and total panopticon of our existence, of our current society. We're machines, and you are now considered, you are mined, your own data is being mined to be used and exploited for marketing purposes. And that's where we've come. Sam, I don't know if you have anything to say on that.
No, not at all. I mean, it's everything we've been saying.
Yeah.
It's just a shame too, because I often think about, like, why can't people see this? Why can't they see the exploitation of what they're doing, the mainstream media, who they're working for, where they get their money from, how they're all tied in together. These are things that these revolutionaries pointed out. You know what I'm saying? It's the things that, hearing Daniel Ortega talk when he has these speeches and Yankees go home, understanding the whole picture. You know what I'm saying? But it's very easy. I think it was Mark Twain who said it. Like, it's very easy. It's much easier to fool somebody than convince them that they've been fooled, right? You know, and that's what they're doing. They're just continuously duping people. You know how the mainstream media is going to get people to regurgitate this type of rhetoric out there, and they're going to look at their neighbors as the problem and not the ruling class. But, you know, I mean, I'm glad that, you know, you pulled some of these speeches out, because you're right. You know, what were we taught in school? You know, Johnny talks about the empire education. That's what it's all about. What, you know, how people are taught about these figures, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, they still keep going through professional sports. Not to even say, like, you know, they have, like, in the end zone, let's end racism, right? Not to say that that's not a problem we shouldn't tackle, but how should we tackle it? You know, what are some of the most racist things we do as a nation? We go around bombing indigenous people in their homeland. You know, and like I said, there's always ways to tie it together to get people to understand, to get together. You know, it's like, okay, well, now who's the pawns? A lot of white men in this country are being used to go fight these wars. You know, they're taught with the empire education that they're better than everybody else, to go and fight against communism and socialism, and then they get duped, and they're all fighting these wars for rich men. So the system is attacking everybody. That's what Martin Luther King Jr., MLK, you know, he was able to point this out. And because he was able to point it out, that's why they got rid of him. Make no mistake about it, you know. And that FBI tweet, I love to see the fact that there's like almost 4,000 quote tweets. So people get it. There are people out there who are getting it. We just need to make sure the masses get it. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to finish up this section, guys, this one is really worth pointing out from WikiLeaks, of course. The FBI letter to MLK telling him to kill himself within 34 days or face a sex smear. Just to reiterate that, who does this sort of tactic? What party today would do something like this? The Democrats. This is what they do. Not just the Democrats now, but the progressives that have completely embraced this to try to smear people with zero evidence on something like sexual assault or sexual harassment, and then with the same face completely ignore it when it's somebody like Tara Reid who exposes Joe Biden. And that's what we're talking about here. And of course, you know, they say, look into your heart, you know, you're a complete fraud and a great liability to all of us. Negroes, white people in this country have enough frauds of their own, but I'm sure they don't have one at this time that is anywhere near your equal. I mean, this is just, you guys can read it for yourself, but I mean, it's disgusting. And they basically tell him to kill himself to be, you know, they gave him this opportunity, essentially, kill yourself or we'll smear you. And if that doesn't work, then, oh, now we're going to do it ourselves. So again, anybody that has, you know, ever taken on the empire essentially is attacked by it, is eliminated by it in one form or another. And all of these moderates are the white moderates he was talking about, every single one, including some of these people like Kamala Harris, including some of these people that are like the Barack Obamas. These are the Black imperialists. Nothing has changed. And so this is it. And just to finalize it, you know, the time has come for us to civilize ourselves by the total, direct, and immediate abolition of poverty. In Nicaragua, which we're going to talk about next, Nicaragua's number one focus from the Ortega administration is the elimination of poverty. That's their number one focus. It's not to oppose the United States. It's not to have the bestest roads or the bestest material wealth in the country. It's just to get people out of poverty, to make people have something that is a nice living that is not entrenched in poverty. They don't value necessarily the same type of luxuries a lot of the people in the U.S. do, like cars and the biggest houses and AC everywhere. That's not in their priority. Their priority is just to be self-sufficient and lift people out of poverty. So this is a very relevant.
Yeah. We have like the floor is here in the United States where we have almost 750,000 homeless people right now. You know, a lot of veterans living on the streets. You know, people of color, the whole nine yards, being freaking oppressed. You know, financially too, taking resources stripped from them. You know, and then you have this high shelf of people who are living over there, right? You know what I'm saying? That are just have crazy amounts of money in the West. Far more than they know what to do with it. They're going to hand it down to their children's children. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're doing in these countries. They're shortening it up right here. Boop, right? Raise that bottom floor, shorten that high floor. It makes sense. It's basic math, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you can say what you want about China, right? You know, I often talk about Xi Jinping holding Klaus Schwab hand in hand, Narendra Modi speaking. You know, they got them pitted at each other. You know, in society, they're probably having a nice cup of, hot tea in the back before they go on and speak. But at the end of the day, what did China do? they raised a lot of people out of extreme poverty. And that's why people are going along with what they're doing. So at least take a look and see what's happening around you. I mean, their floor is so much higher than our floor. Everybody every day is subject to be thrown out in the streets and being homeless. They're 1 or 2 paychecks away, fam, from being homeless here in America. And that's why when I went to Nicaragua, you saw that. You saw why the people followed Danielle, right? It was all about education, infrastructure, and healthcare, right? Those things, making sure people have food, resources. I think it was, Terry who told me, she says, a feminist in Nicaragua will say, well, feminism is about supporting electricity, infrastructure, roads, those things, making sure that I have food to feed my children. You know what I'm saying? Those are the things that are really important. It's all about resources.
100%, fam. And we're going to talk more about that. Terry and I are going to try to do a video specifically on that subject of feminism and what it means. And what it means in the States or Western countries, not just in the States, but in some Western, countries that have this neoliberal ideology versus what it means for people in the global South. And it's completely different, 2 completely different things.
Yeah.